Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to be with you for this short fireside chat with my guest, Natalie de Gama Rose, Chief Legal Officer for Archway. My name is Andy Staples. I'm the head of the Policy and Insights team at Economist Impact. We've got a very short period of time, and thank you very much for joining us. Let me just get us underway by inviting you to give us an idea of who Archway are and where you sit within this constellation of actors focused on the health of the oceans.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It's very nice to meet you all. Archway is headquartered in Singapore. We have three companies, one being Arch and Hook, which supplies product manufactured from material we create called Blue Wave, and manufactures and processes that material to create end product for companies such as Nike. So hangers, shop fits, crates, that sort of thing. We have a second company called Plastic Bean, which supplies Blue Wave as a raw material for manufacture by industrial and FMCG partners for end product that goes to consumers. And our third company is focused on the healthcare sector, so pill bottles, blister packs, that type of product, again, manufactured from Blue Wave, our own material.
And Blue Wave,
Yes.
I think this is right at the heart of it. Please give us
is.
an understanding of Blue Wave.
Yes. Blue Wave is derived from marine plastics, ocean-bound plastics, post-consumer waste. It is high-grade thermoplastic material, and uniquely it is recyclable and permanently so, provided it's not contaminated with other materials.
Mm-hmm. So this is plastics coming from FMCG and so on that would have been ended up in the oceans. You're taking out of that and recycling into new products that can be used elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you're here in Singapore, and I think it's very interesting to ask you why that is. You operate globally, but could you give us an idea of why you came here to Singapore? And as you look out across Asia Pacific from Singapore, where do you see some of the opportunities for you to be growing the business?
Well, I think it's probably well known to this audience that the Singapore government is highly supportive of sustainability and has adopted itself some very ambitious plans in its zero waste plan and its green plans. So it is setting the bar high in the region itself, and sharing a lot of the expertise and innovation that's developed within Singapore, within the region. I think the other factor, which is somewhat more regrettable but perhaps fortunate, is that there is a very significant amount of the world's waste located in this area. And until 2018, a lot of waste was brought here from Europe to China. China put a stop to that, and then it was sent to other parts of the region. So our company, Archway, is collecting that waste and creating this new raw material, and a lot of it can be recycled here at perhaps lower cost than it can locally in Europe or in the US or in other places where we have partnerships.
And of course, that continued growth of the region means continued demand and continued production of waste. Where in particular are you active within the region? I think China is a major base for you.
Yes, we do recycle in China from 4 of the largest, the most polluted rivers in the world, actually, but also in other parts of the region, so Indonesia, Malaysia. We source and collect waste from all of these places.
Yeah, okay. Collaboration, partnerships has been quite a theme of today's discussions. So could you give me an idea of the way in which you collaborate and who you partner with in order, as part of your business model? Who is it that, where's the demand? Who are you working with to satisfy that demand? And maybe you could give us an idea of that.
So through Arch and Hook, the company I mentioned earlier, the partnerships we would have at end customers would be companies like Nike, all the large brands where fashion, particularly in retail, where a significant amount of plastic product is employed. either in shop fit or products as simple as hangers. There are many huge landfills filled with hangers. With plastic bean, where we supply raw material, we're talking about industrial partners and very large companies like Unilever, Procter& Gamble, those types of companies where, of course, they make everyday products that we all use all the time. So that's the sort of partnerships that on the customer side, if you like, that we engage in. But we also engage with research institutions, with the UN, with other partnerships that are focused on education of the customer and research.
We were just hearing there from the minister in Indonesia, and I think I heard him right when he said there's 14,000 tons a day of plastic waste that needs to be dealt with. Do you have those type of conversations at the government level as well?
We do engage with at government level. I think you have to in this industry, particularly in Singapore. We're engaged at government level in those types of conversations. We are not limited by the amount of waste that we can manage. It's rather more to do with time. So we have, this year alone, we've recycled sort of just under 33,000 metric tons of waste and projecting to double that in the forthcoming year. So I think we can scale up as rapidly as time allows to resolve that problem.
And then just moving on to, given your background, legal background, thinking about sort of legislative and regulatory regimes. Europe, we were hearing earlier on in some of the conversations, has some very strict regulations that European headquartered companies need to abide by, even when they're operating here within the region. Could you give us a sense of what's holding you back, what's promoting the use of more recycled product as we look here in Asia Pacific?
I think that Asia is an emerging, in some cases, an emerging economy, and then perhaps they're restricted by funds. I think the minister referenced the fact that he welcomed investment, and I think that is something that clearly holds people back. So it's access to finance. However, I think that what's interesting in the current market is that this type of legislation is driving carbon caps and a carbon market that looks as though it will support the access to finance that is required to drive sustainability. And that, I think, is a very positive sign. I think one of your own correspondents, Vijay, is quite heavily involved in discussing the carbon market and how it can be used to actually drive funding and into the market to drive these efforts to manage the issue.
And that's one of the issues, isn't it? This whole sort of array of actors, from the big multilaterals, the ADBs, to the venture capitalists and philanthropic organizations everywhere in between. When you think about the partnerships that you have, it's very much on a commercial basis. You're providing a service, but how do you see that evolving and developing over time?
Well, as far as we're concerned, recycling, it equals decarbonisation. So we completed a life cycle assessment of blue wave materials, which demonstrates a 42% lower global warming potential than their virgin fossil fuel counterparts. So I think we can actually leverage that carbon credit to support our partnerships and allow them to meet their carbon emission caps and avoid the fines and the taxes and so on that they would otherwise attract. So that is one way I see going forward. We may be able to support our partnerships in terms of from a financial point of view and also from a regulatory point of view.
Your stated aim is to work towards the elimination of virgin plastics, but surely that's a huge ambition, and there it seems to me that there will always be a demand for some kind of plastic, virgin plastic use, perhaps in the medical space or in food and so on. Is your ambition realizable, or what needs to happen to help you realize
Sure.
that?
No, it's a good question, and meeting the regulatory requirements for food grade, for food grade plastic is a challenge. That is certainly the case. Certainly something that we're working on. I think that perhaps, although we may not be able to immediately eliminate all the use of all virgin plastic, what we can do is recycle what there is and drive the market towards elimination of single-use plastic, which is extremely damaging to the environment.
Yeah. And when you have those conversations with potential partners, what are some of the arguments that persuade them to come on board and to work with you to accelerate their recycling activities, for example?
I think some of it is to do with the legislative environment in which they operate. They're obliged to, for example, in the UK, you're required to have, going forward, 40% material composition of recycled plastic. So that would be one reason why companies would be obliged to work with a company like ours. I think the other thing is that the price that you pay first off for the material is actually not a true reflection of the actual price saving that you are going to receive by using recycled plastic, particularly our plastic, particularly Blue Wave, because it is permanently recyclable. So if you can introduce circularity in your supply chain, going forward, you can actually reduce your costs over time.
And just to dig a little bit deeper, I think you mentioned that Blue Wave is fully recyclable, so it's recyclable plastic that can then be used again and again. Is that correct? Yeah.
Provided it's not contaminated with other materials, yes. Right. That's the case.
Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left, and I'd like to sort of turn your thoughts to the future as you look at you've got the ambition of taking another, 33,000 tons of plastics out of the ocean by the end of next year. Maybe if I could ask you to raise your sights to 3 years and 5 years, where do you see Archway then, and what expanded role would you be playing?
Yeah, I think clearly we're aiming to continue our efforts to recycle and participate in decarbonisation, elimination of fossil fuels. I think the other ambition that we have is to create, is to engage in, a program whereby if a product carries our Blue Wave trademark, a customer can be assured that what they are buying is permanently recyclable and made of recyclable material. And I think at present consumers are not clear what can be recycled or what can't be recycled. So I think that would be a very significant step in the right direction in supporting consumer education. And that I think would be a very valid ambition.
And there's the education of consumers at one end, there's talking to governments as they shape their policies at the other end, and then there's getting on with the job, which is relatively straightforward. It's a collection of materials, it's recycling. But where will you be putting most of your efforts, I guess, in the coming 6 to 12 months?
We're scaling up, so my personal efforts as the Chief Legal Officer will go in securing our compliance efforts, moving towards the FSA and the FDA certifications, supporting our scale up from a financial perspective, looking at the evolution of the carbon credit market and how we can participate in that to support the efforts in funding and financing sustainability, and just the general run-of-the-mill things that you do as a lawyer in a business of this size.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to take us through Archway and the role that you play in promoting the health of the oceans, and which
Thank
you're
you
having
very much.
success in that in the mission. With that, everybody, we're just about at time. I do believe that our next session will be live from Uruguay, Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastics pollution. So please do stay around for that one, which will
Thank
be
you very
directly
much.
relevant to you. And please join me in thanking my guest, Natalie, from Archway. Thank you very much for
Thank you
joining
very
us.
much.